kind of like a, I think people like Mike because I'm kind of a unique kind of character.
And I have
I love to
You just see how games and possessions are more intense, how they mean more.
I'm not putting him on.
I think the U.S. is going to obviously win this.
Hello and welcome to Nothing But Respect. My name is Harry Krinsky. We are joined, as always, by Patrick Redford, and today a special Shams and Woj expert, Giri Nathan. I want to say something really quickly at the top, which is that podcasts have, inciting lore incidents, right? They have things where maybe it goes from a hobby to like real ass life. And us planning a Woj versus Shams episode the week where he surprise retires is that moment for us. It's like it's where shit like got real for us. So Patrick, what is your kind of top line thought about the Woj bomb?
One of the defining characteristics of the Woj bomb is not so much that like there is one that stands out. It's that there are so many. Like his final one being an Isaac Okoro 3-year extension deal for under $40 million is like kind of a perfect final document for him to leave, because the real effect is just that like this happens so much all the time and like not always for players that matter.
Yeah, it's really the cumulative bombardment more than like any specific banger that he had, because it just makes you pay this constant low level attention to shit that sports fans historically have not remotely cared about.
Yeah, such as like a Facundo Campazzo extension that comes in across the wires at 12:45 a.m. Eastern.
It is true. It's like maybe his real legacy is that he's gotten like millionaire and billionaires to turn post notifications on for him.
Yeah,
that's
I was listening to John Hollinger on a pod recently, and he was talking about how front offices would just be following Woj's Twitter like during free agency, because it was just the fastest way to get this information. It would get there faster than the official league office report of the transaction. So he definitely got to a point where he was, outstripping, I guess, the official mode of league communication. But like, to what end? Like, what purpose is this serving?
To get the names of 3 CAA agents in there as a second-round pick signs an Exhibit 10 deal with the Charlotte Hornets.
So to go back to my intro, Patrick and I were talking about kind of like what more long-term episodes we could do, more evergreen stuff, ironically, and we were like, oh, what's one of the most evergreen staples of the NBA? Woj and Shams. And we were like planning this episode, literally going to record the day after the news breaks, and we get this notification that he retired. And I think it's perfect because a bunch of people have come out and started, actually talking about him more recently and all this stuff. And one of the things I've actually noticed about some of the coverage writ large, especially from like some of the more major media outlets, is they are really only covering the ESPN era and like what he has represented recently, but he has such a long tail, and the original impetus for this episode is you really can't tell the story of modern NBA fandom without talking about Woj and Shams and Twitter and breaking news and all this stuff. So it's a very rich tapestry, which is why we wanted to talk about this. So before I get into kind of like the Woj timeline of his career, which ironically started with him being born in Bristol, Connecticut, do you have any overarching Woj and thoughts, Giri and Patrick?
Well, I think one effect, one of the reasons I wanted to have you on, Giri, is Woj's and Shams' use of the English language and the way that it has degraded over the time, and like the specific things we can learn from those degradations are like an object of fascination that you have chronicled, not him, I guess him particularly, but also generally across sports writing.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. Well, it says a lot of depressing stuff about what like the function of sports writing is and how that's changed over time, where it presumably it used to be more about communicating interesting facts to people who are interested in sports. And now it's like this like sort of like what should be just like a insider like subscription service. He should just like sell this at like $20,000 a year to like NBA teams or something, so like that they can have it. But for some reason, it's been grafted onto the like informational ecosystem of mainstream sports, which is ESPN. Which is just like, why is this super esoteric, uninteresting information being spread on like, the most mainstream possible network for talking about sports? It just feels like a total mismatch. But to his credit, he has gotten at least some segment of NBA fans. He's created and then developed this sort of perverse appetite for these mini irrelevant scoops, and in the process, what anyone would have gone to for sports writing for in the past has just been rendered totally irrelevant. I mean, probably like permanently irrelevant, if I'm being real.
Yeah, there's no going back, and it's also like there will never be another figure like Woj, in the sense that if he was born in 1987, for example, with like the same sort of will to power, work ethic, and like interest, he would probably just be like a TikTok guy or something. Like the breaking of news and like his attachment to journalism is almost like a charming anachronism.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and I feel like maybe that's one thing that distinguishes him from Shams. I might actually make the reverse argument, like where Shams was born into this and he would have been this no matter what. But Woj, I think, still remembers the before times where he was like writing takes for like a regional newspaper and following teams in a beat way and like doing kind of normal journalistic stuff. But maybe he just looked at what he had wrought over the last 2 decades and was just like so repulsed by it that he just needed to take on a more wholesome livelihood by becoming the general manager of a college basketball team.
This is his like Oppenheimer moment. He's looking
yeah.
back.
I think it is. And then the like secondary question behind that is like, when is this like a come to Jesus moment for Shams, where he's like, if I'm just the same guy 20 years down the road, am I going to have a breakdown like this too? Or is someone going to fill the void? Must there always be two? Like, is there like the Sith like rule of two? Do there always have to be 2 of these guys in the world? Who's stepping up?
Shams like totally spins out this year, dropping completely fake trades, like kind of spiraling. He becomes like basically NBA Sentinel.
Yeah.
He's like, I don't fucking, who cares? All right. Well, speaking of how we got to where we are in the Woj versus Shams, I think going through Woj's early career and early history will be helpful because you're right. Woj is an example of like a bridge person between new media, TikTok, views over everything, engagement over everything, and this like hard ass old school media, like get off my corner. I'm gonna kind of try to control ESPN. I'm gonna go into battle, have beef with other media companies, all this stuff. So he does represent this funny thing. So Woj was born in a little kind of backstory. He was born in Bristol, Connecticut, as I said, which is unbelievable just as a thing to be born in
it's beautiful.
An ESPN oil town. Like he's has that in his blood. Works at a bunch of various kind of like tri-state area newspapers, eventually gets a break at it was doing apparently good work. This is like other people writing about him. I can't really speak to whether his reporting was good or not, but gets a job at Yahoo Sports in 2007 and then joins Twitter in 2009. So there's this period between 2007 and 2009 where I guess he's at Yahoo, he's not on Twitter, and Twitter I think is where he really begins to become who he is. Of course, he is known principally for Woj bombs. But he was signed to Yahoo as a opinion columnist and analyst. Like he was giving takes about how teams would go, all this stuff. I think he was mixing in reporting in there, but he was principally giving his opinion on the matter on stuff. I'm going to eventually go into the decision and all of that, but I want to stop because Giri, I know you're a Bergen County, New Jersey head and want to speak to perhaps how that maybe shaped Woj.
Yeah, I don't have I'm technically from Essex County, but it's adjacent to Bergen. I don't have any specific thoughts or memories of the record from that time, but I was probably just like passively coming across his stuff. It was like pre me paying attention to bylines, but yeah, it's definitely back in like the aughts and late 90s, like a pretty robust media ecosystem, a bunch of solid newspapers with a bunch of solid sports sections. And at that time, obviously the Nets were still around. So it was probably a good place to kind of like cut your teeth as a reporter and columnist.
I wonder if in the same way that being from ESPN had maybe like infected Woj with some sort of sports rating parasite, if you, Giddy, you read Woj takes during your formative years at the Record of Bergen County, and that is like to some degree responsible for your life.
Yeah, it's a horrifying prospect.
Yeah, it's a dark thought. I shouldn't have said that.
Well, the problem is there's a tremendous amount of possible psychic energy that New Jersey and basketball could have had on you, because New Jersey just has between the high school basketball excellence out of New Jersey, the sort of general New Jerseyness, and then also they're I don't know if you guys know this, but they were absolutely prolific Maccabi Jewish Youth Olympics teams. The Bergen County, Monmouth County teams would just clean up.
I believe that.
So that could have any of those things could have affected you.
Yeah.
Were you guys on? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna ask. Were you guys on Twitter in 2009, like in this era?
No.
I think I joined in like 2012.
It was like a shockingly different place. There's like way fewer people. Hashtags is like the meta of the day. You still had to do the manual QRT, so you would just like write your QRT post, then type in all caps RT, and then just copy and paste the original post. And like, I guess if one of the themes is how much things have changed under Woj, it is worth noting like Twitter is like the accelerant for I think so much of his rise, and it was such a different place when he started out.
Yeah, I mean nothing that he has become now like would be possible without Twitter, because if you're moving just at the scale of even digital media like publishing, you know, when ESPN posts an article, it's not just like automatically, you might get a push notification, but it's not automatically flying around the internet the way that a tweet is. Yeah,
there's like an immediacy to it. And I think, Harry, the decision is like a really interesting turning point for both Woj and basketball media at large.
It's true. The thing, there's a few things important to talk about the decision. Obviously, most people probably know this was when LeBron picked Miami over going back to Cleveland, did it on national TV, Boys and Girls Club interview with ESPN.
Taking his talents to South Beach, vitamin water.
Yes, all of that, exactly. A few important things. And important also in the way they have bad memory hold. One is that Woj just like hated LeBron, which is something that if I had to guess now, I would be like, they probably are fucking best friends. But and who knows if money, them both being kind of like members of basketball Illuminati, have just allowed them to squash their petty grievances, or if they do still hate each other, who's really to say. But leading up to so in the early days of Woj's coverage of LeBron, he was fairly critical of LeBron. There's a bunch of posts or Yahoo blog posts about him not kind of disparaging LeBron, talking about how he wasn't. There was one that was painting his NBA Finals appearance with the Cavs, with that horrible Cavs team as like kind of a failure on LeBron, and I think there's a line in there that's like, this cements Dwayne Wade as the best young superstar in the NBA, which is hilariously wrong. And it also seemed like, and this is other people's reporting, not my own, but that he was also kind of getting stuff wrong about LeBron when it came to breaking stuff. It didn't seem like he had a great grip on what actually was going on in the LeBron camp, which makes sense, I guess, if you're writing shitty articles about these people. You wouldn't get good scoops. And some of this comes to a head around the decision. And so there are a lot of articles coming out around the decision. Woj has some really funny articles about this. I'm going to read a few. One is I believe this is 4 days before the decision. What's more, James and his guys have ramped up the launch of a new personal website and foreshadowed it as the place to find out about big news on his free agency choice. One that possibly won't be made until he's done marketing the LeBron James skill camp in American. So just hilarious concept of the LeBron James brain trust being like, yo, what if LeBronJames.com is where we like? What if what if instead of likes and retweets, it's bronze and brawnies? Like, just such a kind of like early internet dumbass idea. Where it really gets critical, and then I'll let you guys react to this. Is this is another one kind of talking about the hullabaloo around the decision. This is from Woj. And maybe most of all, you get the idea that James is an overgrown teenager getting a few laughs with his buddies driving home from Akron from his cattle call in Cleveland to watch cartoons, play video games, and kill some time until he gives the nod to post the big news that maybe the rest of us should have seen coming all along. He's home. So it's both wrong. Well, look, what are your thoughts on that?
It's completely incoherent.
Yeah, that's so bad. Also, our first use of ramping up, which is a really interesting...
That ends up being a real through line for him. Yeah. Yeah, ramping up.
This is just kind of how, like, columnist guys thought about and talked about LeBron at the time, right? Like, the overgrown teenager thing, the, like, getting a few laughs with his buddies. This is, like... It's so funny to think about now that LeBron is this like elder statesman who everyone loves and considers this basketball genius, like how the perception of him was framed against Jordan and Kobe in this like totally insane way.
It's also really funny to look at all this in retrospect, where it's like you had this guy upon whom people foisted like insane, unreasonable expectations, and he more or less lived up and exceeded all of them without having any meaningful scandal or misstep in his life. and yet this is how people were writing about him at the time.
No, it's a good
ridiculous.
Point. LeBron didn't have the media training that say a Jason Tatum does now, that where you come out like a fully grown, weird, repressed adult as an 18-year-old out of Duke. But he also clearly had a good head on his shoulders. Like, he's not like fucking off. He's like, his biggest problem is that he's like 19 and a millionaire and laughing at fart jokes. Like, it doesn't seem that bad.
Well, there was this real, like, if he leaves Cleveland, he'll be painted as this traitor, this like horrible and a lot of this, like, you know, this smacks of race around this time too. It's a lot of just this like black, and this is pre-player empowerment. So it's like, oh, this black teenager is like choosing to go play in Florida with his friends and win championships. And like the idea of like a pure ring, I think has been by now 15 years later, like pretty, not like dismissed, like people still correctly revere that Dirk title, but like the idea that he is operating and making rational choices for himself and is like exercising control is like, people really, really were not ready for that at the time.
Yeah, that's definitely true.
And the other, I sort of stumbled through the end of that quote, but something that's important to this quote too is that Woj is insinuating that he has the scoop that LeBron is staying in Cleveland.
Yes,
which
that's why it makes it make even less sense. Yeah.
The direct line is like the nod to post the big news that maybe the rest of us should have known all along. He's home. So it's in this context of him returning home. to move to so that was 4 days before. This is 1 day before, which is now after the and this is where, to your point of like racial undertones, this is where the undertones jump the shark a little bit. And this is the decision broadcast has now been announced. The championship of me, which I actually don't know even what that's reference to, but I think he's talking about the TV
decision,
broadcast. Yeah. Comes crashing into a prime time cable infomercial that LeBron James and his cronies have been working to make happen for months. A slow, cynical churn of manufactured drama that sports has never witnessed. It actually gets better. As historic monuments go, this is the Rushmore of basketball hubris and narcissism. The vacuous star for our vacuous times. All about brawn and all about nothing. James is throwing a few foosball tables at boys and girls clubs, an empty gesture out of the empty superstar. It's so... I'll finish the rest, but that's the real... He has turned free agency into the title of our times, a preening pageant of fawning, begging, and pleading. Hardworking people are dragged into municipalities and told... and told to hold signs, chant scripted slogans, and beg a diva who doesn't care about them to accept a $100 million contract.
Okay, I can accept a slow, cynical churning of manufactured drama that sports has never witnessed, but he loses me at dragging hardworking people into municipalities.
Yeah, I mean, so like, obviously we can look back at this and say, you know, the decision was kind of like a cheesy, over the top, melodramatic spectacle that, you know, no one really got anything out of. But I also have to point out how prophetic this one line is here, where he says, a slow, cynical churning of manufactured drama that sports has never witnessed basically describes the last 10 years of Woj's career, more or less.
I had the same thought. He's oddly prophetic about what basketball will become. He was just wrong about like who the good guys and bad guys are.
Totally, and he clearly wasn't so principled that he wasn't going to get into that business once it was the thing that sells.
I mean, there's so much to unpack about this screed. It is funny. This is the 1.0 version of a kind of manic tweet thread, because these articles are coming out every day on Yahoo. Like, he is just going crazy on the MacBook Air. Like, it's crazy.
Being a columnist is so sick. Just like, literally don't know any facts or information, but just go off the dome for like 700 words.
No,
yeah, and like the sort of vague intonations of like, you know, these vacuous times. He's a preening superstar. What he's basically grappling with is like this proto understanding of social media, and it's like that is the thing that like makes Woj, and it's like he's either unaware of it or like his posture here, I guess, is just as the columnist, your job is to always kind of be reactionary necessarily. You just have to say like, this guy sucks.
Yeah, I wonder if this was his wake-up moment where he's like, okay, this is where all the energy is. Like, this is how I'm going to position my career to be relevant for the...
I should start LeBronJames.com.
Yeah. I should squat on the URL. But yeah, he's clearly having this kind of knee-jerk response to someone building hype sort of outside of the sanctioned spaces for building hype, like the kinds of newspapers he might write for.
Yeah, and you know, to give a little bit of credit or to at least temper Woj a little bit, much like how the decision now in hindsight seems very silly, the reaction to it is that was like the sentiment. I think his flowery language is especially kind of funny, but the sentiment was a very widely accepted understanding.
Yes, that's for
I mean,
sure.
the Dan Gilbert Comic Sans letter to me is like the document of this. Like,
yeah,
And it is so crazy that he came back and won a title there like not that long after this.
Right. And like announced it just like in a different weird way.
Yeah.
Except on like a Players Tribune article where he was like forced Andrew Wiggins to get traded.
I mean, I remember LeBron going back to the Cavs as a news story that was like 0.05 times the size of the decision. I mean, it's not, he called it the decision. He did a TV spectacle. Like that's on him to a certain degree, but it really feels like this was like the sort of moment where like, I guess perception turned, but then like we've kind of talked about, he was right sort of about the like mode and spread of information. And it is very interesting to see Woj be so wrong about this in the way he is.
Totally. And there's a funny conversation to be had, which I think we'll get into, which is this fame versus power and influence thing where LeBron, I think, a little bit learned his lesson of like, oh, okay, maybe having my finger on the levers of power from a back end perspective is better than being on live TV or whatever. So he did, because the kind of rest of his career, the defining thing is LeBron's shrewd ability to have a PR campaign that functions basically without LeBron knowingly being a part of, or, you know, ostensibly being the face of it. Moving to 2011, because your point, Woj does, I think, learn his lesson a little bit and says, okay, I'm going to become the Twitter guy. And this is another part that I think has been forgotten from the a number of the more recent Woj career eulogies, is that Woj hated ESPN. Mm-hmm. And this is a cool thing. I like that Woj just like had a stick up his ass for ESPN. An unbelievable quote from a great the great Kevin Draper wrote a great really long profile of all of this. This is a quote from Rick Bucher. I have had agents and executives tell me Woj has a jihad against ESPN, says Bleacher Report and former ESPN Rick Bucher. He has a mission to take ESPN down. Bucher wasn't the only person to use the word jihad to describe how Wojnarowski approaches competition with ESPN. So there's this bizarre thing of Woj going around seemingly insinuating or at least giving, or maybe this was just like the humor in the ESPN water cooler at the time, but that ESPN is Woj is doing a jihad against ESPN. That language aside, he did hate ESPN and did kind of have this a number of quotes, a number of breadcrumbs that basically was like all of this, and this all came to a head at the 2011 draft. Do either of you guys want to talk about kind of how that went down in your experience with that? That was when he first beat. Was
he tipping
when he
all the
first
picks?
started live tweeting the drafts? Exactly.
And the draft is on ESPN, right?
Yes.
So he's
Right.
doing this as he is specifically asserting power that they can't have. And I guess we talk a lot about like Woj getting like that his actual superpower is getting information you would have found out 5 minutes later, just to you faster. Like he's very rarely unearthing new shit that no one would have found out anyway. But the draft is like the one time where temporality is totally like the operative factor. And so if he's tipping picks, it's like, why would you watch the draft? Just have Twitter open.
Right. And the fact that he continued doing it even when he was at ESPN to the chagrin of the TV execs is also pretty funny.
That's one of the funniest things, because was it the first draft that he was there? When he was told he couldn't tip picks, and so he started using just a variety of different verbs. Like
the
Portland
euphemisms were
enamored of someone.
Yeah, the Celtics are engorged for Robert Williams.
The Sacramento Kings are tumescent at the prospect of drafting De'Aaron Fox 5th overall.
I do want to pause here though and ask a tricky question that I do think kind of gets at why Woj is so important. Is it's now hard to think about why it was so cool that Woj was live tweeting the draft in 2011. Mm-hmm. But the truth is, it was awesome. Seeing experience Woj live tweet the draft as an NBA fan was so awesome. I felt so part of something larger. I felt like such a NBA super fan. It really kind of like fused my fandom with the NBA, and I think a lot of people felt that way. Was that your guys' experience as well? And why do you think that mattered in that moment?
I think it felt like was this total moment of change, and it's like the move from analog to digital is, I think, a pretty literal way to put it, but it's like all of a sudden it felt like basketball, instead of happening around you and you need people to decode it, it felt so much more direct. It was as if you'd removed a layer or two from the conversation, because I was just a guy on Twitter, and it never, like, the immediacy and stuff of it never felt totally to the fore. And this was a moment where this sort of like distribution of real-time information as a mode found the actual information that was like perfect for coming across it, if that makes sense. It's also funny that the 2011 draft was notably pretty ass. We have Derek Williams going second and Enes Kanter going third.
That's tough.
Yeah, I think. I mean, I guess the draft in particular is like this spectacle full of like hope and anticipation. It's probably you have this vision of like these war rooms of teams kind of huddled up and doing all this important research like behind closed doors, and then you just have this like derpy looking columnist beating all of them to the punch, and it just makes you it kind of poked a hole, I guess, in my image of these very serious front office operations, which I guess my by that point decade of Knicks fandom should have completely blown open that image in the first place. But yeah, just understanding how porous all that stuff, how much favor trading there could be, the idea of an information broker, I just stuff I never would have thought about or cared about until he just kind of foisted it into the center of like an online person's NBA fandom.
There's also an element of that this was coming into sort of, he exploded onto NBA Twitter around the same time that some of the kind of early like hardwood paroxysm like analytic thinkers were coming on. And so there was this feeling, at least I remember feeling like I'm in the room with all the smart NBA thinkers. Like I'm in the room with the guys who get the scoops faster. I'm in the room with the guys who are thinking, or guys and girls and whoever are thinking about basketball in this new cutting edge way that maybe and this maybe gets a little bit, tell me if I'm going too crazy here, but there is this, we're coming out of the late 2000s kind of hero ball. Everybody's trying to be the next Jordan. Teams seem to be valuing this like scoring Jordan simulacrum that isn't getting wins, but like those in the know are realizing that team basketball, which especially at the time kind of aligned with analytic driven basketball, were a step ahead, and that you could then be a step ahead by following these folks on Twitter and liking Shane Battier and understanding why Kevin Garnett is like so important to the Celtics and et cetera. And like all of this sort of this under the surface stuff was looped into, oh, and by the way, we're getting the, like, if we couldn't have a better metaphor for us, the NBA superfans being ahead of mainstream media, it's like we're getting the draft picks before ESPN is even releasing them. And so that is sort of why maybe there was a spiritual love of Woj early on. I'm curious how that lands.
I think that's basically exactly right, because this is sort of like the first mover advantage era of basketball Twitter, where like if you're Sebastian Peretti, you can parlay like a year or two of good blogging into like a front office job.
Very true.
It's like the emergence of the wised up basketball internet that kind of swallowed the rest of the basketball internet over time. I think like a lot of the I guess one thing I'm stumbling on is like, was I thinking about was I conflating like a sort of nuanced understanding of X's and O's with like absorbing and transmitting information quickly in the way Woj was? Did I like ascribe any like sophistication to Woj in the way he looked at basketball? And that part I'm not it's hard to remember, but probably yes, compared to just like a random talking head on on TV or sports radio. It seemed obvious that this guy like was tapped in a way that those people weren't, but I did fundamentally think he was kind of dumb all along.
Well, that's kind of one of the interesting things about him, and this was a critique that I have occasionally heard and maybe even been dumb enough to make myself, that like this guy doesn't really know ball or seem to like it or be interested in it. Like it seems like the basketball of it is like sort of somewhat incidental to Woj the person and his interests. Like I guess if he wasn't about to be the GM of a college basketball team, he strikes me as someone who would have just retired and just not watched, like gone Don Nelson mode, like never watched another NBA game in his life.
Totally. I mean, he is such a. I mean, you get to use derpy. He is such a like kind of derpy, kind of unathletic looking fellow. Well, with all due respect.
Yeah, nothing but respect for Woj. I mean, he eventually got his ass on TV like a lot. So I mean, he understood that's the game with ESPN.
Okay, so moving on to a scandal that I did not know about until doing this deep dive. It seems to be largely unearthed in this Kevin Draper piece, though. I think it maybe was floating around other places as well, and it launches us into a conversation about the kind of like seediness of basketball access journalism and stuff. And my current somewhat employer, the Meadowlark Media, the Dan Le Batard Show, did a thing today where Dan and I think Amin Al-Hassan like kind of broke down the three. They were like, there's access journalism, there's analytics, and then there's kind of like beat reporters, and there's hosts, and like it's important that we think about all these things, and the average fan doesn't, which I thought was a fair point, that maybe the average fan isn't thinking about it. But it didn't feel super prescient to me because it's been those lines have been so blurred for so long that it felt like, of course, those lines are blurred. But in 2014, when this story broke, the lines were a little bit more blurry. So let me outline this. The skinny of it is basically that Joe Dumars was in Woj's pocket, and that Woj was trading favorable coverage for the Pistons in the Joe Dumars era for Joe Dumars to be his little kind of like mole in the industry. There's a lot of really funny stuff about what's going on. The first is just like how dog shit the Pistons were at this time. And so I'm going to read this quote, which will tell a little bit about this. So with Detroit sliding down in the standings, Wojnarowski broke nearly every significant and insignificant Pistons story for half a decade. The Allen Iverson trade, the Amir Johnson drafting, Austin Day, Ben Gordon signing, and Charlie Villanueva signing, hiring John Kuster, trading Aaron Aflalo, signing Chris Wilcox, signing Ben Wallace, drafting Greg Monroe, signing Tracy McGrady, Rip Hamilton, arguing with John Kuster, drafting Brandon Knight, hiring Lawrence Frank, blah, 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 blah. There's so many more. So, first of all, the Pistons suck. Second of all, Woj broke every single one of those stories. Then, as a counter, between 2008 and 2012, Wojnarowski didn't write a negative piece about Dumars or the Pistons, despite the fact that they had transformed from a perennial contender to an also-ran. Instead, Wojnarowski penned several sympathetic profiles of Dumars, including one that covered his completion of his college degree and another wholly about his defensive skills as a player in the 1980s.
That's so tight.
That's really, really funny.
I mean, say what you want. He's a real friend, you know? In Joe Dumars' hour of need, he was there to help him. Seeing Draper just write out that particular string of transactions, this must feel like when you're like an elementary school kid and you go to a PTA meeting and you just get your teacher's just like, okay, your reading comprehension score, ass, your math score, and it just goes through like all of your failures over the last 6 months. Like, I would be squirming.
I got to pull up the best part is how the NBA eventually figured this out, which is like out of a spy novel. My jaw dropped when I read this. In 2010, the NBA fined Dumars $500,000 for leaking confidential memos to Wojnarowski. According to multiple sources, this matches the third largest publicly owned fine the league has ever handed down. The NBA decided that too many memos were making it into the media, so they conducted a sting operation over several months. They would change a few words or numbers in different teams' copies of otherwise identical memos, so that when the memos leaked, they could spot the small differences and trace them back to the leaker. This approach caught Dumars red-handed, as well as an executive from another team who was fined $12,000 for leaking Draft Focus website. Dumars and the NBA Pistons, Joe Dumars, the Detroit Pistons, and the NBA have all declined to comment on this fine. That's
so great.
I mean, that happens in a TV show. Oh, it happens in what TV show? Oh, it happens in The Departed. That's what I was. It's fully like what they try to do to sniff out the rat in The Departed. It's like the exact same thing, which, by the way, came out 2 years later. So
maybe they were inspired.
Yeah.
This is another thing I really like about this is that no one has any notion of OPSEC. Like, no one would have ever thought that like there would be this huge sting operation on Woj, or that you shouldn't just copy and paste, like that you couldn't do any sort of summary or anything.
It's also kind of funny to think about, like, okay, what does Adam Silver even do? What are these big heads of these leagues even do besides like brokering a deal once every 10 years? I guess what they do is like CIA style sting ops on the Detroit Pistons. It's unbelievable. It's ruthless, and it's funny. It speaks to the kind of like pre-neoliberal vibe of Stern versus what Silver would do. Like, Silver is probably just like working with the NSA to literally tap Woj's phone and like get access to everything. Whereas, or like not just the CIA, but in the NSA, he's also working with like, there's like Palantir is going to sponsor the fucking Warriors next year.
The sponsor of this podcast.
Yeah, in addition to this podcast. Yeah. But the putting like heat scanners on the dome, the James Dolan dome, like that. In trading that, he gets to monitor Woj's every single text he makes.
Well, it also made me think like maybe this sting operation is what got Woj in the habit of writing such fucked up sentences where he had to like paraphrase it exotically, so he wasn't showing any of the fingerprints of who was giving him the information.
Oh, that's interesting. Like the NBA is writing too coherently, and so as a way to throw people off the scent, he has to wash it through like Google Translate, like Finnish to Basque to Swedish back to English, and then he can post it. Wow. All right, he's learning some tradecraft.
We should see this like before and after moment as in his writing. Well, he also just kind of stopped writing at that point, but yeah. Yeah,
he learned his lesson. Never write a sentence.
If you use like 11 commas, it fries the NLP that the NBA was using. It like overheats the tech that they were using.
Yeah, things have ramped up and down so many alternate times that they can't keep track of which direction things are ramping anymore.
It's so funny. It's like Adam Silver's like staring at the report, and it's like wait, the NLP is telling me that John Wall is signing with the Schmurda dance? Like, what the fuck? It's just like totally backwards. I think this is a good time to move over to talking about the other titan of access journalism, which is Shams Charania. I did less research on Shams, so could you guys give me a little rundown of the important moments in the Shams life cycle.
So Shams first started blogging for Real GM when he was in college, which is a great place of origin. And he's like, there's these stories about him breaking news on his phone, like while he's in class. I think he's somewhere in Chicago when he's doing this.
I think Loyola, maybe.
Yeah, Loyola.
Yeah.
He links up with Woj at Yahoo when he's like just like very young, just out of college, and I think he sort of gets his start like
he dropped out. I think to do.
Oh, he dropped out.
I'm pretty sure
because he got his early scoops are like stuff that no one else was really even concerned about. It was like G League signings, guys signing to little minimum deals in the summer. Like he really just like he got his foot in the door as a newsbreaker. I think smartly by just figuring out what is the shit that not like fans don't really care about this, but it's like the breaking of news is what matters. And I think this is like a sort of interesting frame for the figure of Shams because he's very different than Woj in the sense that like I don't think he doesn't strike me as a power broker as much. And I think the reporting on him has made this very clear. It's kind of just a numbers game. It's just about getting scoops. It's like, there's like a coldness to it. And so I think if you're the one who can break that Steve Novak has signed with like the Guangzhou Sharks or whatever, like that is, you have broken news. It is like, you have done new shit. It does not matter how insignificant it is to the NBA landscape. You've done that and you can sort of just paperclip your way into perhaps more significant scoops. So he was getting like a few things that like started to be slightly larger and probably got on Woj's radar, or definitely got on Woj's radar that way. And he joins Yahoo a couple years before Woj goes to ESPN.
There's a funny kind of supply side extremism happening here too, where NBA fans, in an attempt to kind of like out esoteric everybody else in NBA Twitter, are then having, or I should say, sorry, a demand side. I got my Egon 101 terms mixed up.
What's the difference?
Yeah, right. Where they're like, I want to know the more esoteric stuff so I can kind of like participate in the spectacle of online fandom better than the other freaks or whatever.
I think that's right. Yeah. Like, and also like, it is important to note he's coming up in the post-Woj NBA. Like, just the idea of him breaking something that's stupid on Twitter and like Twitter being the vehicle for it and there being an audience for it is totally downstream of Woj essentially tipping picks in the 2011 draft and like starting to break news on Twitter. But it's just that like, whereas Woj maybe saw the importance of Twitter, the medium, and like molded it to it. Like there's a certain amount of vision there, even if it's just sort of incidental. Shams is just like operating on Twitter. Like, this is what happens. This is where you go. Like, it's sort of a second time as farce. This is my grand theory of Shams and Woj, fits into that framework very well. But like, he probably does not really conceive that there is any other way for news to break at the time. And they're briefly like a very successful tag team. They break like a ton of stuff in the summers of like 2016 and 2017. They kind of have this buddy thing going. Shams is like very young while this is happening too. Like he's just 30 right now. His birthday is April Fool's Day, which I find like another one of those Woj born in Bristol moments where it's like a little too cute.
Wait, he's 30 right now.
He's 30. Yeah. He's a young guy. I've run into him in person once in the bowels of the Golden One Center in Sacramento. And my main scouting report on him is that he's a tiny little guy. And if I had to take him in the post, I think I would, I'd get the ball around the elbow, pass it back out, repost a few feet earlier, and then just like shoulder once, shoulder twice, half hook. But that's a subject for another podcast. Right. But point is, little guy, him and Woj are operating at a pretty high, like they're breaking all the news and kind of doing it together around this time.
Yeah, I forget how they would attribute the scoops. Would they say like, would Woj tweet it out and it would be like, according to reports from me and Shams Charania, or would they alternate who gets to tweet it out? Was Shams like building up his following at this point?
They would share some stuff, and I think Shams was probably getting stuff before Woj and just tweeting it out, sources tell Yahoo. And I think I don't think anyone was really seeing the seeds of the rivalry, but I would have to assume they happened around this time because like they weren't just sharing every single scoop. Like they were kind of on the same team, but I think because of this role and how just basically how fine the margins are between you announcing that like Leandro Barbosa has signed a 1-year deal and like the team just announcing that is like could be 30 seconds or something. Like there's a pretty intense level of like inherent to the form. There's an intense level of competition.
Yeah, and maybe Woj, like, you know, Woj at this time especially had his eyes on ESPN. Like that's the big kind of monster was ESPN, and so he was looking forward before he realized that the monster was Shams, before he then realized that the monster maybe was him all along. The monster was his iPhone 16s all along.
Yeah, I mean, we'll get into some of the grim details about the iPhone in particular, but there's a monster in this story.
Yeah.
I'm looking at, I think I misspoke. I thought he dropped out from college, but he actually just became a commuter student for the last 2 years. And as he said, I was really low key. I was in and out of classes, usually sat in the back. I had a couple of friends in each class, and that was pretty much it. And then he was like really pumped to just go to Scoops full time at age 23.
Which, in a way, I have to say is like 100,000x more prominent than my path, but that's kind of how I got into basketball journalism. I studied something totally different in college, but just kind of like doing this for fun. And I would just be like on my computer, but instead of posting the tweets, I was like looking at Woj tweets in class, and then started doing it full time after college. So I see a certain bucket getting cousin in Shams, only he's like I said, way more successful than I will ever be. So respect to him on that.
Well, this actually kind of is a helpful segue to start talking about this era that we enter in this post 2011 kind of I would say 2013 through 17, 18 era, which the Brian Curtis, a very good piece for Grantland, titles the trade rumor era. I think, I don't know, maybe it might now more accurately be called like the Woj bomb era, whatever. But this era, which we're kind of all talking about, which is this notion of the young NBA fans who were 10, 11, 12 when the internet started coming out, become fully literate online fans. They're getting their news from warriorsworld.com or RealGM or all of these forums. They're getting their news from Twitter. They're expecting a kind of higher level of quality and immediacy from the writing that they're getting. They're expecting there's kind of like this Bill Simmons revolution of like, we want it to be online first, and we wanted to mix in cultural references, and we want it to all happen really fast, and we're also going to debate you online. This kind of thing becomes really popular in the NBA, and as all of these voices, because suddenly anybody can be a writer, collide into one media landscape, more things become reasonable things to write about. A great I think example of this era is that it's also at Grantland around the same time the NBA After Dark podcast launched, which was the Chris Ryan, Julia Littman podcast that was NBA podcast that was specifically focused on the off the court Instagram drama of the NBA. And I don't even know actually how popular that podcast was. I listened to it and loved it, but just the notion that a media, and Deadspin and Gawker is a completely also part of this notion that maybe part of the beat of an NBA reporter can be the superfluous drama outside of the X's and O's. It can also be the big data of the NBA. And now layering my own analysis is like the powers that be, I think, much like perhaps fentanyl, like did not realize just how fucking potent this juice was, and it really took off. Like it became the dominant thing I think people talk about when they were having like basketball discussions, which then has kind of mutated in this weird way where we're currently at. But they became extremely popular. People who would write about drama, people who would write about beef and kind of all this goofy stuff. An interesting quote from this, two interesting quotes from this 2014 profile. One is, this could be the tagline of our podcast. It's transactions, period. People love transactions. And then this is a really kind of crazy thing. The strangeness of Stein, talking about Mark Stein, new world began to dawn on him in January 2007 when he got massive traffic for reporting a trade. Earl Boykins had been shipped to Milwaukee. Like, incredible. And then one other thing in the same line, the piece from Curtis starts with the story about Tim Bontemps. It was more important than any story Bontemps had written all year. That's because the trade rumor, shorthand for any off-season transaction news, has become the dominant form of NBA journalism. For anybody in my line of work, Bontemps said, the offseason has really become bigger than the regular season. The fate of Kidd and LeBron and Melo is now more important in media terms than San Antonio winning an NBA title. I get the sense that maybe he was kind of being flippant or jokey in his quote, but that basically just reads as true and prophetic now. It's really kind of jarring and strange. So I don't know. What do you guys make of this trade rumor era?
I think it's interesting that like it is being cast as this mutual exclusivity between basketball as basketball and the off-season drama stuff, because the era that immediately follows this is the sort of highest TV ratings the NBA has ever gotten, because it's the LeBron Cavs against the Steph Warriors. And like, especially because Draymond's around, like there's this element of drama that totally propels it and makes it more and more popular, but like that is being played out on the court. And I think maybe a lot of this is a reaction to how little people liked the LeBron Heat and the late period Spurs. Like I guess what we're talking about is the filthy casual, the like people who would maybe be otherwise less engaged in the NBA kind of coming in. And I think there really is like a particularity to how interesting the teams are and how big of a deal they always are, that like then I think becomes more pronounced as more people have access, and like this is all democratized, I suppose.
The American casual class is shrinking rapidly. We're growing. It's one of those two.
Yeah, this was like the boom times for the casual class. I feel like these observations from this Brian Curtis piece all feel pretty predictive. Like looking back at them, where you have, as like Patrick pointed out, the on-court basketball is becoming as popular as it ever has. But then as soon as the finals are over, you have like a seemingly unending cycle of rumors and transactions and signings that kind of make it this 12 months a year, 24/7, like media colossus. And now we have even more layers to that than we had in 2014, where I feel like we have like sort of bizarro media entities that exist only on Instagram or on TikTok and like filter these transactions into memes, which are then circulated and maybe become more popular than like either the initial reports or even like basketball period. So like there's just layers and layers of like infrastructure built on top of these guys just tweeting out information that we're going to learn about 5 minutes later. It probably like creates jobs for like at least 100 people. I don't know. Maybe more.
Yeah, Woj, like us, is a small business owner style job creator.
I feel like every week I'm coming across some weird ass Instagram thing like buckets or like some like, and I can't never fully wrap my head around what it is, but it is absolutely fueled by all these kind of rumors and whisperings and all the drama around what is ultimately like, not hugely dramatic figures a lot of the time. If you could imagine all this circling around someone as dull as Kawhi Leonard, like during what summer was that? 2019.
2019, yeah.
Yeah. So there's a lot of work that goes into building this all out.
And
go ahead.
as on the level of phenomenology, I think it's the way that I make sense of transactions and trade rumors and the offseason being more popular than the season is like, as basketball is happening, that is like a present tense thing that is not super duper exciting. Like when you're watching a January game between even good teams, like if you're watching like the Mavs play the Wolves or whatever, like that is just one game and the stakes are extremely clear. But if it's the off season, you're like, oh, Jaden McDaniels resigned, whatever stupid transaction you want to think about, like that is future. It's like there's a future tense to it. And I think that like scratches the sort of itch of, it scratches the same itch that I think fantasy sports and maybe gambling do, where there's a certain uncertainty and predictivity to it that is like interesting to fans.
Another interesting, I agree, and Curtis kind of adds this notion of like, one team wins every year, right? But how do you create the propulsive feeling of hope? And it's by having like the possibility to talk yourself into a championship team every time there's a microtransaction that happens, right? And that's fun. Like I'm not about that specific point. I think that that's one of the most fun parts about being a fan.
I have an anecdote here, which is I hung out with my friend who's a Wolves fan this past weekend, and I was like, "Are you excited about the team?" And he talked to me about losing Monte Morris and not signing Tyus Jones for like 10 minutes.
Yeah. No, and there's a very real, like, soft and like beautiful part about all of this that I do think there's a real, for again, like it felt fun to be on Twitter, reading and reacting and thinking about and like dropping in the group chat a Woj tweet and then getting to talk about it like that. That was all really fun. One point I wanted to add to this trade rumor era that I think is interesting is we now have the hindsight to see that the bones of the NBA cap and CBA were such that more fun transactions could happen. Mm-hmm. There was this post LeBron big three and everybody was trying to get a big three, and there's nothing more fun than a superstar being traded. And so there were all these like attempts to create and engineer big threes to solve them. Then there was the cap bump, that insane couple of years where there was funny money, and so that was very exciting. Now I've begun to see this, and I will save this, but I've got a theory about why I think Woj left. But the trade conversation is now extremely jargony, and like the reason they're trading like the rights to Ilyasova is because they're in the second apron, and that means that like it sucks. Like it's not fucking. I used to be able to understand like the mid-level exception. Okay, I get it. You can get somebody that's like in the middle. Now I don't understand at all who or is able to, actually make trades and all of that. And so it there's this element of trade journalism is just less fun. These people who are getting, and then maybe the last thing, and I'll stop rambling, is like the league is deeper, so the trades, the smarter and maybe more savvy team building move is not to blow it up and like go star hunting. It's to like see if you can find this sixth man or the seventh man around the margins and make your team better in a kind of more normal way. Whereas, like in 2000, again with the Warriors in 2017, that was the defining day of the NBA season, was the day that Kevin Durant got traded. Whereas like there's not going to be one of those this year, no matter what happens.
And it's something I feel like we've like said we've said 10/10 of this, but have never said it all at once, is like something that really came up during that early Twitter era that is now totally metastasized is GM brain. Just this like, as you are seeing these transactions happen, it is like And a lot of the dominant writing was sort of from this, like all the early low stuff. It's like from the perspective of team builders and GMs. And it's like, here's the smart way to build teams. And you think about that and you think, okay, even if I don't want to win arguments with my friends, but like that's the main thing people want, is like, this is now the smartest way to do it. And it's like, that is like, I guess, a fun and also like the most informed way you can like have basketball arguments, I think.
Totally. I want to ask about. I want to pose a question to you guys. Is the not the Woj and Shams era over? Because clearly the Woj. I'm sorry, not the Woj versus Shams era, because clearly that era is over. But is the Woj and Shams era over? Like, is the access journalism as superstar media figure in the NBA, like, does that even matter anymore?
So you have to think that there's some reason this role persisted as long as it did. And we would get little whispers of it here and there where it's like, Woj gave some team a little bit of advice on, like, I forget, was it a draft thing or a player that might become available later? So he presumably was sweetening the deal for his sources in some way beyond, merely using a flattering adjective for the agent in the tweet. So I think there is going to be some niche that does hold value for a lot of powerful people in the NBA, and that I guess to me it's like totally arbitrary whether that niche is someone who's quote unquote a journalist and like tweeting out scoops, or just someone like a super plugged in, I don't know, like TV producer or super agent or someone who can work the Rolodex, but maybe doesn't have a concrete public output like tweets and like 3-paragraph long articles. I think someone's going to do that. Like the thought that's occurring to me over and over and over again is that there should be just some insider freak who charges teams like a subscription rate for this kind of stuff. Like, why is it public facing? I have no idea. Why is this part of ESPN's business model? I guess they would say, and something we've talked about on our staff, is that like you kind of create this all-in-one media ecosystem where ESPN is broadcasting the games and then breaking all the little microtransactions and then doing the studio shows where you talk about the microtransactions and the games and then creating some podcasts. So it just feels like it's your one-stop shop for like 24/7 NBA coverage. So I guess in that sense, they needed Woj to be like the sort of scoopster aspect of it, and I don't know, maybe just like a human billboard for ESPN to the extent anyone consuming his scoops just like positively associated him with the brand. But I don't know, are more people like this going to come into existence? It's hard to say.
Yeah, I wonder if the scoopster role, I mean, because just news organizations generally have been or not having a good time, and like all of Woj's rise is contemporaneous with the kind of like death of digital media writ large. And now in the late period, you have, the propaganda documentaries from like Netflix coming out. You have more and more like players just sort of announcing their own news, and
they're cutting out the middleman. Yeah,
and it's actually a good segue back to the timeline of it, because when Woj comes to ESPN, he bounces Mark Stein and Henry Abbott, and True Hoop and all that gets shut down, which is like, voicier, more column-y stuff in favor of just hard news, because that is ultimately like what moves the product. Like you get people to care about it, not by like writing interesting stories. You get them to care about it by having it all in-house and having the off-season drama of it all. Like you said, fuel the games and fuel the ESPN product.
Giri, I think that point about it being paywalled is so interesting and correct. And I am now finding myself thinking about like why that doesn't, like, how has that not already happened? I had a while ago, I was at some event and I was talking to this guy who basically runs a Substack where he finds kind of weird business either malpractice or like business kind of flaws in models in the business model, and he just like paywalls that information and sells it, and investors all, and he makes like puff shit, or I don't know how much money he makes, but like that's his business. And I am kind of like that tracks to me as a group. There is a group of people who would pay for that. I don't know. Maybe it might be as simple as like he just didn't want to do that. He like came up in legacy media and wanted to dominate legacy media, and that's why he wanted to do it.
Right. It does seem like he got a lot of his motivation from like spiting and then taking over specific institutional brands too.
And maybe someone like that does exist because we necessarily wouldn't know about them, right?
That's a good point.
Yeah, I feel like something. Yeah, it'd be part of this broader trend in media towards like hyper specialized stuff that can be like business expensed, right? Like even like a Bloomberg
like this podcast.
Subscription. Yeah. yeah, exactly. And you would think if he did have some nuggets of value, maybe I would say it could come down to something like this. So he has things of value to different people, but he doesn't want to expose the information to everyone at the same time. Like he probably wants to do it in drips and drabs to different people when he's trying to get different things out of them. Which sounds incredible. Like I would love to know how he organized his like system of like pulleys and chains and like carrots and sticks to like get all the right news at the right times. But yeah.
I wanted to actually talk about that because a strange little pet theory I have about exactly that is about why at a certain point if you look at 2011, you look at the Joe Dumars thing, he was trading favors for kind of this like deep state thing. Then it was favorable tweets. And then it was like, I'm going to explicitly name drop the podcast of the players, right? Which was hilarious with the Duncan Robinson long shot podcast, which I did briefly work on at a different time. Then it is now we're in this strange era where it's just straight up tweeting the agent's name, and the theory I guess is that there has to be some kind of market demand for this kind of thing, like that. There's some reason why the agents are asking for this, and is it that the shift has happened from deep state lever pulling to just like straight up the agents want clout, and like they've figured out that maybe having an extra 10,000 Twitter followers will help them make money because like they're trying to play the game. They are a willing participant in the Woj Shams economy. So like what are they getting out of having their name in a tweet? The only thing I can think of is like clout, which is strange to me because then it makes me think that there's like a weird return to clout where it used to be we were in this deep state period where levers were being pulled in secret, but now maybe like everything is so diffuse that there are no levers to be pulled in secret. So now might as well just win the clout Olympics. I don't know. It's half baked. I'm curious what you guys think.
I mean, maybe you can just sign bigger and more important players if you are a more important and powerful agent. And maybe then Woj's Twitter page, especially in the like the biggest time period for this sort of offense is like post-draft when unsigned guys like sign with Summer League or G League teams. That is when he will list like 4 CAA agents out. And maybe he's like a trade publication, and players, teams, and agents all read it and they see like, oh, Drew Mintz of CAA really has signed a lot of guys this summer. That's interesting. Maybe I should direct my clients toward him or whatever.
Yeah, I was thinking about this because like I guess there are a handful of agents who really do like to bring themselves into the spotlight. Like what's Katie's agent, Rich Kleinman? I feel like he's one of them. He was even throwing like a pre-US Open party that like Naomi Osaka and Carlos Alcaraz were at. I was like, yeah, this does seem like some kind of return to form for the agent. And I guess what I'm trying to figure out still is if if the value of the does the it's kind of like in the same way that the players can just kind of beam their thoughts and branding shit directly to fans and consumers now. Maybe the agents no longer need Woj to write flattering things about them. They can just kind of crow on their own platforms about whatever it is they want to say. It just seems like it's applying across the board. In fact, the idea that you need institutional media to kind of validate your work is almost old-fashioned, and it's surprising that the Woj bomb maybe even worked for as long as it did. When you can just kind of, go on your Instagram and post like a video of like the guy signing his contract or something, right, and be like, look at this, like, isn't this cute?
That the algorithm spice du jour is no longer a late breaking news. It's like Trae Young being like, this season I'm about to be different.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
That's the catnip now. So
right.
A really interesting example to consider here is the case of soccer, which has like just the biggest bullshit economy of fake newsbreakers and people who get things wrong constantly and fan propaganda accounts. And almost everything serious that happens is either like announced by the teams or someone like semi-official. And they have, in the biggest sport in the world, have found a way to bring all of that sort of in-house. So I think of that as the future, honestly. Like, there is no Woj or Shams of soccer. Like, the guy who does the closest thing to it, Fabrizio Romano, is a guy who will make his own graphics, but then just seconds after the team announces it. Like, he gets some stuff, but it's mostly just like, he's a tap-in merchant, to use soccer lingo.
No, it's true. The new experience is of all these things is not getting the Woj bomb in your group chat. It's what Giri very beautifully articulated, which is like you see like some cooked ass meme, then you see a fake trade, then you see like 6 other weird graphics, and then you like Google it and find out it's true. That's like the new experience, which is uncanny.
In a way, Giddy, really when you tried to set up the Woj bot in our Slack during the draft so we could get notifications for every pick and accidentally put all of Woj's mentions briefly for several minutes into our Slack, you may have been unintentionally making a very like profound Dadaist point on the future.
It was a performance art piece. We got to see the fire hose of shit that is just pointed at him, I guess, at all hours of the day. Maybe that wore him down too.
Well, and something there is like fans conceived of him as having access to the lathe of heaven. Like there's this almost like creationist bent to it, where it's like, it's not just that Woj is like announcing that Dyson Daniels is going to play for the Hawks as part of the DeJounte Murray trade next year. It's like he is moving these pieces himself. Like something that this is like a very deep, embarrassing thing is like the Kings did this post where it was how the squad came together, but it's all Woj bombs. And it was like the various Woj tweets of like them being enamored of De'Aaron Fox, or like the two funny things there is, one, he didn't break all those. Like a lot of those are Shams scoops. So the Woj bomb for like the Domas trade is like a link to his column on like he didn't get that one. But like to have an NBA team who is like playing into this fan fiction, it was like, it was extremely confusing to me. And off-putting, definitely off-putting. I didn't like it. I didn't know. I don't want to see that information.
Dude, I don't blame you. We can kind of transition into ending, but just at least we've got some new data in, which is the bombs are not going to stop from Shams, at least. Just in, Memphis Grizzlies are waiving former NBA MVP Derrick Rose, sources tell The Athletic. So microtransactions are still coming in.
He's September 23rd, never stops grinding. I mean, we should talk about Shams a little bit. There was this New York Mag profile of him from almost exactly a year ago, where he reveals that he averages 18 hours of screen time a day, which is like more hours than any of us are awake or any human should be awake. And he brags about going on vacation and getting it down to 12 or 14. Which is a really, like, this man is 30 years old, and soon his eye sockets are going to be, half a foot deep into his head from just staring at his phone all day. Like, it's really grim. They also, there's a New York Post profile done by fast food chain enthusiast Ryan Glass-Steagall, where he notes that, and this is a direct quote, he does not plan to pursue a mate at this time, which is beautifully using Sham's language to talk about the man himself. So I really, this feels so patronizing, but I do worry about his future.
Yeah, it's like one of the least enviable basketball media existences I could imagine. You don't sleep. You live to tweet out that Derrick Rose is getting cut from the Grizzlies in September.
He should be at the club, sincerely.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a grim life.
Giddy has now put in the chat a Photoshop of Woj with like sort of, I would say, a fade and a wave, a little notch,
waves, a little
and
fade.
2 AirPods.
Yeah. This is one of my favorite Woj-related images.
That's a beautiful image. I guess we've sort of hinted at this, and we should talk about it a little bit. Shams is one of my favorite users of language.
Writers of our time.
And
Yeah,
Giddy,
definitely.
you have awarded now for Defector, you've awarded 3 editions of the Shamsies, which is the Shams Charania Award for excellence in divulging of information through syntax comprehended by many.
Yeah.
And Shams has not won any of these awards, but Woj actually has.
It's true. Hold on. Let's see.
Actually, no, that's true.
He won the
Shams won the
first
first one.
He won
That's
the
right.
first one.
That's right.
Yeah. He won the inaugural one. Should we read the sentence that he wrote that won him?
I would love to.
I want to hear him, but can you also just
so good.
for my own and for the listeners, can you explain what you're talking about his misuse of
Totally.
language?
Yeah. So there's this style of writing that I think the direct analogy we can draw is to a police report, the exonerative tense, where subjects are disembodied, sentences are relayed in passive structure, and there's just this totally disjointed and like post-human feeling to them. So I think the single favorite detail I have is the one that made me want to start writing about this in the first place was he had a parenthetical in a story he wrote for The Athletic where he listed in parentheses the years that Barack Obama was in the White House.
That was when he broke that was the NBA strike story, right?
Yeah, that was the NBA strike story.
U.S. president 2009 to 2017.
Yeah, it was. And then there was the one where he was talking about Simmons and Karl Anthony Towns fighting, and he wrote, all parties viewed Simmons as a peacemaker in scuffle. Simmons was seen on top of Towns, calming him down with his arms.
And then he had this one. He's also he has this sort of like post rules based understanding of the metaphor as a language device. And he really just likes to put that shit in a blender. This is Samar Khalaf drew a cartoon of this for our website. And the sentence is, when Kyrie Irving demanded a trade from the Brooklyn Nets on Friday, a league-altering domino fell and shook up the marketplace, causing a shockwave across the league and an arms race to get underway. It would pit several of the teams looking for that one difference-making piece that could get them to the top of the list of the title contenders against each other.
Unbelievable.
Which is just like an incredible pair of sentences.
So if we think about like what is causing someone to write like this, one I think is speed. So in some cases, like his sentences get edited in real time, and we'll like screenshot them so we can see how they change once someone actually bothers to look at them. Another is for sure that he's just trying to like scrub the fingerprints of whoever gave him the information, or like phrase it in a way that favors the source that gave it to him, and maybe downplays the role of some other party in the thing he's trying to write about. But what the end result for just a consumer of this news is to just like what you would think is a premium for a reporter, just like clarity, succinctness, like getting to the point, is just completely lost. And the single nugget of just like, I don't know, someone's getting suspended for a game gets buried in all these weird clauses. And it's just like a totally bizarro style of sports writing that is also kind of becoming the most popular and more, on some level, the most dominant mode that people read about sports in writing, to the extent they still do, which is not that much.
Can I read the sentence that he won the first Shamsi for?
Yeah.
And this is on Kyrie Irving's refusal to get vaccinated. Kyrie is like his guy. Like he gets every major Kyrie scoop. And as you'll see here, he's kind of doing 2011 Woj moves to him. So Irving has made more than $160 million over his NBA contracts and has a massive Nike shoe endorsement deal. So those who know Irving understand he is not driven right now by money, nor cares for inheriting more, but rather the stand for larger issues in his mind that need his support. The thing I like about this sentence, and I think this is what makes it one of the best, maybe the best Shamsi winner, is that like what he's saying is evil, and he's not that far from expressing it in like a pretty straightforward way. But it's like the every flourish he adds, every bit of license, everything that is not just like the Wikipedia version of this sentence makes it bad in a unique way. And those ways, at least standing for larger issues in my mind, compound upon each other in such a way.
Totally. This was like the perfect storm where this guy's at this point, mastered this totally like obscurantist, abstracted approach to reporting news. But then suddenly he has, maybe for the one time in his life, he has a story that's like of broader moral relevance to society, and he's choosing to explain like the most like clown fraudulent, like dumbass reasons to avoid vaccination in these super highfalutin "I'm carrying water for you" terms. And it's just like, oh my God, the one time you had anything morally sensitive, you just put it right into the usual like sausage factory and pumped out the same impenetrable gibberish.
Honestly, that era of Brooklyn Nets teams was really, really, really great for Shamsicality. I mean, Woj won the following year also for a report on the Nets. It was less Kyrie centric.
Yeah,
I have it here in front of me. For everything owner Joe Tsai and general manager Sean Marks did to assemble one of the modern NBA's most talented big threes, Irving's impenetrable connection to Durant looms as a domino to the dismantling of the roster. Brooklyn is straddling the narrowest of walkways, keeping conviction on Irving's contract talks and keeping Durant's desire to stay in net. This is so tight.
That one is very interesting to me because there's language in there that is attempting to be artful or descriptive, not just obfuscating. Yet it's this one is more of a genius by craft. Like it was just sort of like,
that's a good read.
He it's just not a good sentence, right? It's just like whereas there's maybe a less of a kind of like sinister reason he's being oblique. It's just like he is maybe just hasn't written clearly in a while.
Well, he's not saying anything. Like this is, I think, another classic hallmark of like Shamsical language is it's being used to communicate a posture of knowing rather than any actual information. Right. Like the point you're supposed to take away there is that like Woj knows what's going on in the Nets front office, not like here is what's going on in the Nets front office. And so if you're just communicating this intimation of knowledge, you are basically ramping up to the looming pathway of a spanning storm between the reader and the acquisition of knowledge post haste, reportedly according to sources. Then you're going to talk like that. Like you're not going to say anything straightforward.
It makes me sad because I feel like there used to be some era of media where like quote unquote insiders actually would tease little juicy bits of information to the piggies once in a while, but like now you're getting like Derrick Rose cut from the Grizzlies in September. Like they don't even bother like throwing a drop of opium to the masses anymore. It's just the slop all the time.
Can I read you Woj was nominated for a Shamsi last year, this is great because this has nothing to do with trades. This has nothing to do with like there's no posture of knowingness. This is just like straight up bad writering. With concern that the Pistons may not be able to fly out of Dallas until Thursday because of icing issues, there's obvious uncertainty about the Pelicans' ability to fly into Dallas today for Thursday's game versus the Mavericks. Pelicans are in Denver now. So if a train leaves at Cleveland west, at this many miles an hour, he's basically given us this like very banal weather update in the most confusing way.
It's wonderful.
I mean, it's reading that it does again kind of make me sad, where it's like, what we're running on fumes here. That is a weather report about a regular season game that is
involving the Pistons.
True, yeah. That is essentially irrelevant. Like,
completely irrelevant.
Like, it's like it is the terminal updating. It's like the gate number updating at JFK. Like that is what is being reported on, and it's like a non-trivial amount of psychic energy is required by Woj to get that scoop. I mean, I'm sure he wasn't like going crazy, but it's like you got to read your text, you got to get it up quickly, stop whatever you're doing. Like it's like, what the fuck?
Figure out where several planes and NBA teams are. Like, and like, well, that's actually a good segue into something that we should definitely talk about, which is why Woj is leaving to go do tax fraud for boosters, allegedly. It's just someone pointed this out to me. It's such a bummer that St. Bonnie is a private school because
right,
yeah, exactly. The FOIA squad would get active, but
damn, Ken Klippenstein.
He talked about how he didn't want to have 3 hours of sleep a night anymore just to get these transactions. Like there's a real like human cost to it. And something we were talking about earlier is like, this is almost a story about mortality. Like when Adam Schefter was talking about Woj when he was filling in for him on NBA Today, he just kept talking about, this man is 55 years old. He didn't want to miss his family anymore. He didn't want to take his phone with him to the bathroom and hold it in one hand while he was pissing with the other, because that's like the price of the gig. And, Jeff Passan and Pete Thamel were on that show and they were laughing, but Schefter wasn't joking. Like there's a very like serious human cost to all this. And when you consider like what the end product of that is, which is like, Malik Monk re-signing or whatever, like it's extremely bleak. Like this man is like, he gave all of his 40s and half of his 50s to give fans just the stupidest transactions possible. I mean, he benefited from it immensely.
Bad?
That's a good question. Yeah. Do you think he looks upon his mighty works?
Like, is he really in Oppenheimer mode? I think completely 100% no. I don't think he feels bad.
I think I agree.
He made good money out of it.
Yeah, I mean, he walked away from about $20 million over 3 years. Like that's way more than vet minimum money.
Yeah, by a lot. Yeah.
My take on why he's leaving is that he has realized. I mean, okay, if I'm being completely, my general instinct is to actually take him at his word here, which is that like probably wanted to change, and like that amount of money, whatever. What's the Kyrie word? His priorities have changed because of that sum of money has meant whatever the fuck. But that he wants to go do something else. He's in a position where he can do anything else, and he wants to go try to be the GM and turn his college program. I think that's probably...
In Shams' word, the stand for larger issues in his mind that need his support.
Yes, I think that's probably true. The only other kind of like deep state thing that I think might be going on is that he is reading he's had a couple years probably. If we're seeing this sort of like mimetic nothingness, like march toward nothingness of any piece of information, especially basketball information, Woj sees it too. And like it sees that in a kind of like post-truth era or post-time era of NBA news, like he's 1 or 2 years away from being irrelevant. I mean, he is already borderline mimetic in the way that he exists in NBA fandom. And so I think there is a read on this as like a savvy jumping ship before his before he is considered irrelevant or before he's taken out back to get shot, whatever. Like maybe not necessarily by ESPN because they move slowly as well, but I think as a fast-moving, progressive, business-wise guy, he sees the end, at least in this specific type of, source-heavy journalism.
Yeah, and then one wonders how I think that's basically right, and one wonders how someone like Shams is going to have to react to that because he's going to have to, he's going to have to work for a lot longer and through way more profound changes. Like Woj, the tragedy of Woj is that he had to abandon his purple prose columnist style aspirations and then watch his sort of media decade around him, but he still got out while the getting out was good. Mm-hmm. And someone like Shams, who I think the direction for him is already pretty clear because he works for FanDuel, and that has gotten, it should have gotten him into more trouble, I think, but I think whatever information he is going to be charged with the distribution of ramping towards, to use his words, I think that's just going to be, less and less relevant. And I think like maybe he just becomes like a gambling news guy. And I don't like to think about that, but that's like the level of editorial insight and seriousness with which he should be taken. So.
Wait, I was trying to find, speaking of, go ahead, Gary.
It is true. I feel like the thing looming over all of this is like
the domino,
the extent to which gambling has devoured whatever's left of sports media. And I feel like whatever projection we have forward of like what becomes of these scoops guys has to be, kind of framed by that huge transition over the last, 3-4 years.
And like, think about the ethics. Like it was the 2022 draft, I believe, when Shams got in a little bit of trouble because it was 2023 rather. He reported that Scoot was gaining quote unquote gaining serious momentum at number 2 with the Hornets, and that totally swung the odds in this huge way. And like he works for FanDuel, and they like offer props on this shit. Mm-hmm. And it was just a whoopsie that no one really cared to think too much about. But like I think that's just a good instructive example of this sort of like ethical conflicts in the way that ESPN producing NBA Chumbox news and then selling the games is at least like part of the same vertically integrated process where like the end result is basketball on your TV. In this other way, the end result is you making stupid parlays because you saw Shams's tweet and like saw where things were going, but then his information was fucked. And like, it doesn't have to be conspiratorial for that to be unethical, I don't think.
Mm-hmm. It's true. It makes me think that actually the future of this isn't a paywalled Substack. It's like a paywalled API pull where if you're running a gambling model, like you get 10 minutes before early access API to a Shams tweet that like makes your model to do like parlay arbitrage in Lithuania like 4% faster, which is like for real an important money making kind of data thing.
Totally.
I that is that now that I'm thinking about it, it's like that almost seems like the more logical endpoint than a Substack, which could be like screenshotted or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I do on Shams in the 2023 draft. I want to leave us with 2 tweets, which he did unfortunately delete. Sources: Portland is Chris Murray selecting at number 23. Deleted. Sources: Portland is picking Chris Murray selecting at number 23. He eventually got it right in the 3rd try, but he almost got there.
That's really funny. All right. Well, hey, this has been an incredible marathon.
Thank you for joining us for so long.
Yes, if you're still here, Giri, thank you for doing this. Thank you everybody for listening. Trying to think. What did you guys want to plug? Obviously, Defector, incredible gambling platform that you can place esoteric parlays on.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely prop bets on which veteran point guards are being cut from which teams in September.
Use code Samer Kaloff for 10% off all parlay bets involving the 2025 draft and 2027 draft. We only do odd years for legal reasons because we are incorporated in Estonia. And for all your gambling tips and picks, where can people find you, Giddy?
You can definitely get, please write me for gambling tips at sammer@defector.com. And literally any time of the day, breakfast, lunch, dinner.
Yeah, you live for this. You're sort of an aspirational Shams figure in the gambling space yourself.
Yeah, so really any sport. I can be reached sammer@defector.com. So that's where to find me.
That's super great. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, hey, thank you for everybody listening. We are an anti-algorithmic podcast, so email this to your friends. We'll so we can kind of combat the algorithm and become Joe Rogan or whatever the fuck. So
that's right. That's our aspiration.
Subscribe, like all that stuff. All right. See you guys later.
Bye.
See ya.